All right, everybody. So welcome back to podcast number 3. And I don't know what we're going to title this one just yet, but it's most likely about our property and the dream of owning land.
The best purchase of our life.
Sure, something like that. But it's ultimately the dream that we had, how we got here. So if you're just coming across this podcast and you're new to, well, the podcasting to us, we are expecting that the majority of people that are listening to us are coming over from our larger social media channels. The Kelleys Country Life, for example, where we do kind of homesteading, DIY. We built our own house. We've been documenting the whole process of developing our land. And we recently had few house videos do quite well, one in particular, and it's been such a popular question on tell us about the land, how did you get here? And I want to let people know that's listening to this, I'm actually going to post this podcast before I post a land video over on our social media channel, our YouTube and Facebook channel. And I'm going to give tips and tricks and things like that on how people can shop for land, because it's such a daunting task. Man, I can sure remember it. Yeah. Even though it's been quite a few years ago. We spent years and years and years dreaming, looking, and it just seemed not possible. So I know a lot of people get frustrated with that. And that's kind of the ultimate thing that you start with before you get that home. And, you know, for a lot of people, then it goes into the family and the big dream.
Right. And it's just according to and what all you're wanting in the land. Like you had certain things that you wanted. You wanted water and trees and
I had a long laundry list and requests there. Yeah. The country boy in me wanted a certain amount of property, all that we could basically afford, water on it, everything that I could get to make my little redneck paradise, I wanted. All right, so let's take this all the way back, because what the podcast is going to be is ultimately us just sitting down, talking to a camera. Maybe people are streaming and just listening to us only, but this is a conversation.
Yeah, we're diving deeper into the details.
Absolutely.
Of this,
We're not giving all the tips and tricks and everything here, but we want to inspire people and relate to people. So how this all started, and I'm going to do the majority of the talking. No shocker there. People are so used to that. But it started with kind of me having a dream, like it often is. It's the man relationship, and I have got to sell that dream, well, to my wife, girlfriend, whoever it is, whoever I think I'm going to spend the rest of my life with. And believe it or not, this story goes all the way back to when I was 13 years old. I don't even remember if I've ever told you this story. Mm-hmm. And my mother is going to be shocked if she listens to this podcast to learn that she played a huge part in me wanting land, all because of a movie that she let me watch as a kid.
This will be interesting.
Yes, it will be. So I hate to admit the movie, because I'm not the world's biggest fans of some of the actors and actresses, but it was called Far and Away with Nicole Kidman and Tom Cruise. And I can remember, I think I was around 13 years old when that movie, at least I watched it. And for the people that's not familiar with it, Tom Cruise was kind of a poor, broke, I don't know, Irishman or something. I can't even remember the whole plot twist there. And all he was dreaming about was coming to America at the time, because this was way back when America was actually giving away free land. There was so much of it out west.
I don't think I've seen this movie.
Yeah, they were giving it away, and you could go out and actually homestead a certain portion. You could go stake your ground. They did races out to it. Basically, the government was just trying to get more people to develop the United States, but you had to stay there for a certain amount of time and all. But this poor guy that couldn't afford anything where he lived met this, well, uppity-to-do Nicole Kidman, who decided to fall in love with him and run away with him and chase his dream to get this land. And it's just, there's so much more of a story there to it. But I won't ever forget how passionate he was, how much he desired having that land, and it struck something in me. Now then, of course, throughout my childhood, my father, he wants land. He's dreaming about land. I'm riding around with him whenever he's having his dream that I would later have, and I'm sure that inspired me a lot as well. But that movie still 100% is just ingrained in my memory for putting a desire in me for wanting land, because I've seen how passionate Tom Cruise was for it and how much it meant to him. So let's fast forward a few years, because, well, I'm not going out and buying land at 13 now, am I?
Also, something that probably inspired you, as a child was, you saying how your parents, looked for property, and then they finally found a piece of property close to where they lived. And then you were right there with your dad, helping them develop it, build a barn on it over, gosh, how many years did it take them to kind of establish that property?
Well, we're still not done with the barn yet. That's coming up on the other channel. But,
true.
But you're right, and it was a very similar scenario. I don't think Mom cared about the land at all. I think she was just like, Dad, go find your land, get it developed, and build me my house. That's
she wanted the house.
Mom ever wanted, and she knew if the land came, the house would eventually come. And it's this very similar story. We didn't grow up poor or nothing, but we didn't grow up very wealthy either. For the longest time, it was just Dad working. There was a bunch of us children. Mom stayed at home and took care of us. And then they kind of went through, the financial situation that we did, on hard times, young in a marriage, and then digging yourself out of that hole. And it was a big dream for them too. And I do remember Dad riding around looking for that property for years. And this story should relate to so many people, because so many people do this. It's just a dream. They think about it. They ride around. They look. And, when he finally got it, I helped him clear the road all the way into the property, clear it, and put the first well down and dig all the ditches and run the plumbing and the same things that we did over here. So, I got to experience that. And that probably was a huge part in keeping that fire lit inside of me.
Well, and also to kind of put you on the same process of how you wanted to do it here, just slowly get into it and develop it over time. Not I want it now, I'm going to have it now, and everything's going to be done in a year.
That did help point us in that right direction, but I think probably more than anything was the financial hardships that you and I fell on later in life. So we won't dig too much into that because we talked about that in our first episode here. But and we're going to have a full conversation on it one day. I think that's something very important for people to hear. But long story short, the housing bubble of 07, 08, and 09 kind of happened. It popped. Land prices were inflated like you've never seen. So was the housing market. And I had to close my business, and we totaled a lot of debt. We said we weren't going to file for bankruptcy, and we spent a long time paying that debt off. I had to take a low-paying job because it's all you could find at the time in the economy. And we had to grind for a heck of a long time. And that passion and that desire for the land was still burning inside of me that entire time. And it was such a far-fetched dream. I don't think people realize that. I remember at the time I was working for the Department of Corrections, and I was working the midnight shift, and we had little breaks in between making rounds and checking on inmates and things such as that. And I would sit out there with a pen and a piece of paper on the inmate's lunch table, just kind of getting out of the office, didn't really care for the gossip and talking or anything else up there. And I just remember drawing pieces of land. And where would I put a house if I had this much land? I don't know. I was drawing like a 7-year-old, and I was just dreaming. That little piece of paper that I draw on every night, it was like, I guess, the way some people look at a lottery ticket. You know that you probably aren't going to get it, but when you're holding that little piece of paper, the dream's alive. I think that's why a lot of people buy that lottery ticket, knowing the odds are not in their favor. And at the time, that's exactly how I felt. I didn't see an end in sight. We didn't have a dollar to our name. It was going toward paying off every bit of debt. The thought of owning a large tract of land was just a pipe dream. But it inspired me. It kept a desire in me. It was a big reason that kept me working as hard as we both did to pay off a lot of stuff. But I won't never forget that. So all during this time, we're working at the prison. I'm working at the prison. I'm mowing yards on the side. I'm working multiple jobs. You're working multiple jobs. And I start looking, dreaming. I remember stopping by on the way to work and picking up the little real estate booklets that would be out by newsstands and just seeing what property was going for. And at the time, property was just so overinflated because we were experiencing a lot of what, say, Texas is right now, with a lot of wealthier people from out of state moving in, and it's overinflating prices like you'd never believe. And we were seeing that here. We had a lot of people from New York, New Jersey, and South Florida buying land up in our area because it was cheap. But a lot of them weren't paying attention to the fact that it was cheap was because, well, a lot of it's swampland. The local economies are horrible. Some of the lowest paying household incomes in the nation. And guess what? When you overinflate these prices, the local economy can't support it. And that's why we've seen that crash that we did. So all during this time, I'm looking for land, I should say. Tiffany's busting her butt, and you probably can't see land in sight for nothing.
And I'm not as big of a dreamer as you. Like, I want to dream when I know that it's about to, happen in front of me. Then I start really, thinking about all the details. But I'm just not a big dreamer until I know that it's in sight a little bit more.
I'm definitely the one in the relationship that can see far ahead and plans far ahead. Yes, but at the time, I was the guy on the front of the pirate ship looking for land. I'm ready to say I see it, I found it, and I'm dreaming. And I remember looking in the booklets, and even at that time, as crazy as it was with us basically not having a dollar to our name, it felt like. I remember riding around and I started looking at land, and I looked at land for years.
You did.
just seeing what was out there, educating myself, and again, just dreaming. Now, I didn't go waste realtors and people's time. I want y'all to understand that. I just would drive by and look and see how land looked, the prices, watch things coming down, watch the economy implode in front of us like it was doing. Then eventually things started picking up and getting better. So all this is going on, you know. We're slowly getting things better, but we still can't foresee the land dream. You know, we don't have the money. We just dug ourselves out of that.
Yeah, we thought it was going to be
hole.
later future.
Well, it probably should have been, but we were looking, and I won't never forget. I remember exactly where you and I were at. This was probably, oh my goodness, 15 years ago, I'm guessing. We were riding around some back roads because that's what you did when you were young and broke. Well, you just go ride around in the country. There's not much else to do. So we're riding around, and I remember selling you this big pipe dream that we got to make this happen. We've got to get a larger piece of property. We've basically got to start being a little more self-sufficient and kind of homesteading, so to speak, although much more modern times. And we're still not there yet, but we're getting our property toward that. And there was this big, elaborate, dream that I sold you. And I don't know, I remember you kind of just saying, go for it.
Yeah, and it took me by surprise because, at the time, what we had already kind of discussed in our, young marriage was that, we were going to have a certain amount of money in the bank. And, I don't think we even really talked about what our end plan was of where we were going to live, but we were kind of into vehicles and material things a little bit. And for you to tell me that you wanted the exact opposite, you wanted to live off the land, and you hoped that maybe even in our 50s that we could retire and we could just, every day was about survival, how we were going to put food on the table, and our day was not going to be grinding at a dead end job. It was going to be go out, let's go fishing, catch our dinner or lunch, and let's go out and hunt our property and do things like that and just be in nature. And I was just kind of like, oh, this is new. Okay.
So I think that has a lot to do with, I've said this before in another podcast, when you're tired of getting what you're getting, stop doing what you're doing. And you're exactly right. At that point in especially our early years of being together, I had my business, and I thought I was going to live the American dream, which was you're going to be rich and wealthy and have your business and drive fancy cars. And I had the money eyes at the time because I was brainwashed by the world. I thought those materialistic things were what's important. And so many people truly believe that way. And I was caught up in it. So yeah, it was an absolute 180 to say, you know what, I'm tired of chasing this. I want to be a rich American dream that I have been sold. The TV and the magazines have sold me. I'm ready. I'm tired of buying all the vehicles. I'm tired of the debt. I'm tired of everything. And again, this is about the time we found Dave Ramsey too, and some things just started clicking and making sense. And I realized the path that for sure I was going down, we were going down, to always want and desire and to buy these things. And my goodness, with the vacations and the going out to dinner and everything we thought we needed at the time, that economy reset slapped us in the face. And it was actually a really good slap in the face, at least for our circumstances. We learned a lot, and we did a complete 180 coming out of it. So I'm sure that did catch you a bit off guard. Although I've always been a country boy at heart.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And I've always
loved
those
I wanted
things.
land for horses and, things like that. So for me, it made sense. And,
but,
I'm not materialistic by no means.
Well, I was a young entrepreneur at the time and had that business dream, and my paths were slowly going down a different road. And like I said, it took a slap in the face to realize this isn't all it's cracked up to be. It sure isn't. So we did the big reset there and sold you that dream, and then that lit even more fire underneath me. I knew I had to find the property at that point, even though it still seemed a bit far out of reach. But things are slowly getting better, as we discussed, and this is going on over years and years and years. So get the job at the paper mill. Money's doing a little better, paid off the business debt, and I won't never forget, I got off work a midnight shift one night, and my dad was working out there at the time. He was also working midnight shift. Said, hey, I just found 2 pieces of property we really need to go look at. And I did this all the time. I was expecting to drive out there, dream, look a little, go home, go to bed, and go back to work that night, and go out there and see property that's just swampland. It seems like a good deal until you get there. It's too good to be true, and it typically is. I'd seen that years and years and years, just junk land, and that's why the price was as good as it was. So we drove to the first piece of property, looked, sure enough, flooded, couldn't build on it. I see why it's such a reasonable price. I'm tired. I've been at work all night long, but I think Dad was like, how far is the other piece of property? It was pretty good ways, 20, 25 miles at that point, and we're way away from the house. He's like, let's just go on over there and take a look at it. So I was already prepared. I done looked at the property appraiser's website, knew where it was at, and I found this on a little realty company, and that's where this story I really want to get across to people. So we pull up to the property. I don't see a for sale sign nowhere. But I know we're here. I know we're at the right spot because I done pulled up on the property appraiser's website and compared the maps and everything. So I called the realty company. Hey, just want to make sure this property is still for sale. Yeah, it is. Or do we have permission to go walk around on it? You know, there's no house on it. There's no nothing here. Sure, go out there, walk around. We didn't get 5 feet into the woods, and me and Dad are already looking at each other going, there ain't no way this is the property. There ain't no way. And I see the potential here. We're walking through the woods. It's got big trees. We walk up on little ponds. Oh my goodness, there's the water I've always wanted. We come out into some extremely overgrown pastures, but I could see the potential there. And we're going downhill almost the entire time. There's rolling hills here. It's not all flooded. I mean, there's tons of high ground, like never will flood ground. So this can't be right because the price they're already asking, heck, I'd be willing to pay, even though we didn't have the money for it. It was so far out of reach, but it was the best property I had seen out of years and years and years looking, best price per acre. So me and Dad are coming back out of bushwhacking through the woods here. I mean, we're cut up with thorns and everything, and we're covered in sweat and just going through all this nastiness. We get back to the fence out by the highway where the car is. I climb over the barbed wire fence, and I didn't make it 5 feet out into the ditch, and I see what's going on right now. There is the Realtor for Sale sign company. And it looks like it's been in the bottom of that ditch for months. It's been mowed over by our county ditch mowers that come along. It was dry rotted, busted, mildew on it. Nobody knew this property was for sale. Absolutely nobody. It was 100% meant to be for us. So this is the part of the story I really want to get across to people that I'm not going to explain, talking about the property buying tips and tricks. And the other one, I'll hit on a little. So you're probably thinking, well, how did nobody not know it was for sale? I mean, all this stuff's posted online. So this is a big key and takeaway for buying land. I figured out not long before this to get off the big Zillows and the big gigantic real estate companies and the Realtor.com that's posting everything, land and home and landforsale.com, all that stuff. Because what I'm seeing there is they get so much traffic. There's so many people there. They're asking outrageous prices, and there's a ton of competition, especially in today's age. People are driving the prices up. People are overpaying for the property. It's just insane stuff going on like I've never seen. So what I discovered, I don't know, a few weeks or a month before that was I started searching the counties to where I knew we may want to live. And then I started typing in Google, realty companies in such and such city, realty companies such county. And I found this tiny little old real estate company, the one that listed this property, in a town that's literally about 30 miles from here. And they had not posted on Realtor.com. They had not posted on Zillow. They hadn't posted anywhere. It was just on their website. So nobody knew this property was for sale unless you did what I did. Start typing this in, find this tiny little hole-in-the-wall realty company, and then start going through their pictures and descriptions. That's the only reason we got this property. And obviously with it being so far away from their office, none of the realtors ever drove by here. Or they would have stuck another for sale sign back up or picked the one back up out of the ditch. And it looked like it hadn't been touched in forever. So they just invested no time, energy, and effort. Now, that's a bummer for the person trying to sell the place, but it was a blessing in disguise for us.
Right.
All right, so after seeing that sign in the ditch, I knew what was going on. So me and Dad jumped in the car. I remember calling you immediately. You're at work, and I'm driving to the town where Tiffany's at. I have got a story to tell you. And I remember telling you on the way, I have found it. I have found it. After all these years of looking, heck, what did I tell you? I don't remember it exactly.
Yeah, you pulled up to my job and you're like, oh my gosh, as soon as you get off today, you've got to come out here and see this property. I know that we're not in the shape or form to buy anything right now, but you've got to see this property. And he's like, if we love it, he's like, we will figure out how we can get this property. I was like, oh. Seriously? like you're really springing this on me right now, like out of nowhere.
I'm telling you.
So it just took me by surprise. And so we pull out here and I mean, there's like 12-foot dog kennels And like him and his dad had previously walked through and got all scratched up. We were getting eaten by mosquitoes in the swamp out there. And he's just like, look at this. Oh my gosh. It's got water. It's got rolling hills. And I'm just like trekking through all this stuff like, what in the world? You know, and I don't see the vision because.
So this is a good time for me to interject and say, I've always told Tiffany she can't see the forest through the trees. And this was an exact moment to where that couldn't have made any more sense. These pastures out here were literally hadn't been touched in years. So overgrown, you're just pushing stuff back and walking through them. But I can see the potential here.
Yeah, I was like,
you couldn't see the forest through the trees. That's all it was.
Yeah. So we walked it and everything, and I've just always been that easygoing person when it came to our decisions. I'm like, whatever you think. And
that's all I needed to hear. That is all I needed to hear.
I was like, yeah, I want land too. And hey, it's pretty close to the town that we both are working in. So it made sense too. And the price sounded really good and the acreage and all that. So yeah, I was like, okay, whatever. If you could figure it out, I guess we'll do it.
So I decided to do something crazy. So the price they were already asking, it was worth it. I had looked at land for so long, you know it when you see it, right? And I was already willing to pay it, but having spent some time here, having seen that they hadn't posted on any of the major websites, seeing that there was no for sale sign out there, nobody's taking time or attention to come by, I decided to kind of submit an offer, a relatively low offer.
Yeah, I remember you being nervous about it.
I was
You're like,
so nervous.
I don't want to lose out and them say no deal.
Yep.
Or, I'm like, no, there's always room for negotiation.
And my dad thought I was crazy. You need to get this property. You are crazy. Because he'd done rode along enough with me, too. Done seen enough swampland around here and seen that there was finally some high and dry good land for, basically swampland price. He's like, you're crazy. So I called the realtor office, submitted an offer. I think it was a day or two went by. Worst 2 days of my life. So nervous, thinking somebody's going to outbid me. He calls back and says they're not willing to take your offer, but they're going to counter offer. And it wasn't much more at all. It was just a few $1,000 more. And I was like, sold. I said, but here's the thing. I don't know what the heck to do. We don't have no money. I said, we can't pay cash for this. We're going to have to go to a bank and get all this figured out. So he's like, okay, let me call the guy back, and I said, will you lock the price in? Will you lock the contract in for 30 days? He's accepted. I accept his counteroffer. I need 30 days to go make a loan happen. I'm thinking it's going to be relatively easy. We've always had excellent credit. We didn't file bankruptcy. We've always paid our stuff on time. I'm thinking this is going to be okay. I did not know the story that's coming up next. So they lock it in. We got it. Awesome. I go back to work, do my thing. I go to start going to hitting the banks. Bank after bank after bank after bank tells us no because it's too much property. And apparently at the time, and may still be the case, the federal government had made a decision that you and I shouldn't technically own more than 5 acres and it be considered residential. Anything over that, it's commercial loan, needs to be agricultural purposes. It just goes into a completely different department. My heart sank. I was like, you've got to be kidding me. And I even went to our main bank that I had been banking at since I was 15 years old and who has never told me no on anything. That's where I keep my accounts. Again, we had over 800 credit scores at the time, thinking this is a shoe-in. This is back when I really believed in credit. I don't quite so much anymore. And we're told no. Broke my heart. And I remember it was a couple days later. I'm trying to figure out what to do. I'm searching the internet, looking the whole world up and down. What are we going to do? And my bank called back and said, it was a loan officer. She says, hey, so you applied for land loan here the other day and you were told no. I said, yeah, this crazy rule about 5 acres. You and several other banks have done told me I won't loan more than 5 acres. She says, well, I'm from the commercial loan department. Come in and talk to me. We'll see if we can work something out. Long story short, this lady believed in us, required a substantial down payment. That's probably why she really believed in us. And they were already going to come out smelling like roses if they'd got the property anyways. But she wound up giving us a commercial loan. Now, it had crazy different terms and interest rates and all way beyond residential stuff. But we made it happen. And it was about 30 days later before we did the title company and got everything closed and sealed the deal. And all those years of dreaming, ever since 13 years old, all the hardships, the financial times, everything, it happened. We had a piece of dirt that we could call our own.
Right.
There's been no better feeling in my life, other than marrying you, of course, getting that property. So I remember we made the right decision. We come over here and invested time for years and years and years. We camped here. We dreamed. We didn't just come dive right in like a lot of people do and pay somebody to clear it. Go ahead and put a house on immediately and rack up hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt.
We saved for each step of each process we did, putting everything out here from, like you said, the well to driveway to everything. I
mean, we spent months and months and months just land clearing. Then we eventually got a camper, and I come and lived over here 2 weeks out of every month while working shift work and just running a tractor and hand tools and everything we could think of. Then we did our first barn that a tornado decided to remodel for us. Then we did another barn. Then we did our shop, our power, our well, all that stuff, and we paid as we could afford to. We both still were busting our butt working multiple jobs, but we were paying out of pocket this time, trying to make smart decisions, not go back in that hole that we once were in. And it's made, I don't know about you, but it's made me appreciate this property so much more.
Yes, I mean, you definitely have much more appreciation because you have the blood, sweat, and tears into it, you know. But, I mean, I do as well from working just as hard, you know, trying to financially get us there too. But, yeah, definitely appreciate it. And it's so crazy how almost every single person, except for maybe one or two that have been out here, like, feel like this is just like paradise.
It is.
And when you look at it, it just feels that way.
At least when you go look at what's around us, low-lying swampland, which Florida is so much known for, and you finally come to a few high hills here and have little rolling hills in Florida, which just doesn't exist and looks cool to us, and big timber and high and dry ground, little ponds. It's an amazing place, and we have worked extremely hard to get it looking like it is. So I want to get that point across to people. We got this coming up year. This August will be 10 years ago that we bought this property. It was obviously, I felt like, meant for us, the way that we found it, the deal that we got it for. And I don't ever talk about it much financially because it'd probably get people's hopes and dreams up a bit too much. We had a very unique circumstance on how we found this. Does not mean that those circumstances still aren't out there. They probably are. And then here we are dealing with the economy had ballooning again, property back through the roof. I mean, what we have in this now is worth so much more. We just got it at the right time, the right circumstance. And we waited 8 years developing this before we started our house, paying as we go. And that's the point I really want to get across to people. It's such a rewarding feeling to do that. We live in this world now to where everybody's gimme, gotta have it now. I'll finance to the end of days to go ahead and get it now. And that is a hollow, empty, horrible feeling, that being the slave to the lender, as I would always talk about. So I am very proud of how we found it, how we dreamed, how we let it motivate us to make good, wise decisions, and how we've got to the point that we are. And ultimately, we're sharing this whole experience and process with people via social media. And we're very fortunate that there's a ton of people out there that see this and appreciate it. Now, of course, we always get the naggers of, oh, must be nice, oh, that was handed to you. Well, hopefully, hearing that little bit of a story, you can understand that it absolutely was not. As you said, blood, sweat, and tears are absolutely in this place.
And I guess we should tell the people that don't know, we have 51 acres.
Yes, we do.
And we also have a video on the Kelleys Country Life of a property tour if you want to see what we're talking about here.
Yep.
We give a tour of the whole property through the woods, through the trails, showing all the water and all that. So if you're interested, go search that. I think it's Property Tour. Is that the title?
Yeah, I think there's a couple property tours on there, but that one in particular. And we're going to continue to share the journey and process. You know, we still have that dream of kind of make a little more self-sufficient homestead here. We're not going into full prepping mode or anything like that, but as the world gets crazier, it's nice to have a larger piece of property that you can lean on to support you via food or recreation or whatever it may be. I have always seen this place as kind of our little vacation, our little escape. I can come here and it's peaceful, it's quiet. Back whenever I worked at the mill and other places that were wild and crazy, I come over here and find a little peace, you know. This is our vacation, without a doubt, and we're going to continue to share it with people. And speaking of that other channel, I've got a whole list right here. If you're actually watching this, not just listening, I have a whole bunch of tips and tricks on all those years that we went looking for property. Because the thing of it is, a lot of people go find that dream property, at least they think they do. They snatch it right up because, well, I got to get it off the market for somebody else who gets it. And then they realize they didn't do any homework on the property, from easements, water, power, timber rights, mineral rights, all these things people don't think about. And I'm going to cover a lot of that over on our other channel, Kelleys Country Life, for the people that's shopping right now, because I couldn't imagine any worse feeling of finding your dream property, snatching it up, because that's the way the world is right now, because kind of, if you don't, somebody's going to buy it out from under you, especially if you find it on the big name websites. Then only to find out, well, what do you mean I can't build? What do you mean it's in a flood area? Whoa, 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 whoa. I mean, there's all these things you really should check. What do you mean I can't get water on my property? I mean, things that can truly keep you from building a home. So we're going to discuss a lot of that. Anything else you want to put in? I know this has kind of went long here, but this has been such an important part of our life, an important part of our social media channels.
No, I mean, I think we've covered, everyone's question. Just wanting to know more about the property and how we got it and, why it is so special to us. But I think the video that you'll make getting into more details will definitely be a help for everybody. So,
I certainly think that it will. I'm trying to put a lot of time, energy, and effort and thought into that video, and that will be coming out in just a few days on our other channel. So with that said, I think we're going to officially wrap up our third podcast and kind of the story of our dream, our land, how we got here, and we thank everybody that listens to us, and everybody that watches us over on our other social media channel and kind of lives the dream with us as we develop our property and our home and our escape, as I call it, our vacation. All right, so thank y'all for listening. We'll catch you on the next episode.